Hello fellow drivers, thank you for watching this documentary. If you enjoy any part of it, please give it a like and subscribe to support my ability to make future videos. Now enjoy. Do you know anyone who has had the same car for as long as you can remember? Do you still have your first car or finally got that dream car you never want to get rid of? If so, people have probably asked why you want such an old car, or maybe why you spend so much time or money on it. It's crazy to think that I've had my MR2 for over a decade now. I've driven many other cars and owned a few since, but the MR2 was my first car and I've kept it ever since. What makes someone want to stick with a car for such a long time? To try and answer this, I decided to talk to fellow enthusiasts, and the first person I got to meet with is a giant of the community, Jonathan Wong. Some of you may know him as JDM Wong or the once editor-in-chief of Super Street. Making the experience even more surreal, his car was actually in a museum at the time.
I'm Jonathan Wong, and you guys are looking at my 1990 Honda Civic SI hatchback. I built this Civic. It's like a combination of the car that I wish that I owned in high school. So my very first car was not this exact same car, but it was a 91 hatchback. So the same body style, same, the wheels, the exhaust, the clear corner lights. Those were things that I wished I had in 1994, but those were like the really sought after things. I couldn't afford it. That car was nothing like what this one is today. So this car is taking my aspirations at the time, combining it with the things that I was able to do by being an editor at Super Street, which was pretty much, I had the opportunity to get my hands on a lot of really cool parts by partnering with other companies. So, the suspension is really dialed in. The JDM pieces I sourced through a lot of local junkyards or parts importers, things that you can't even buy anymore. The Mugen stuff is, I had to collect these off forums. I think even when I bought some of these things 10 years ago, it seemed really expensive, but now they're triple, quadruple the price now. So I think a lot of things I've been able to do with this car is I was lucky that I did it at the time that I did it, because there's no way I'd be able to build this exact same car now. And then obviously the Rocket Bunny kit is super huge, and I was extremely fortunate to have been able to acquire this kit because of my relationship with K Mira, who's the Rocket Bunny god. So this is, I like to say that this car is a tribute to my youth and who I am now as a car enthusiast. Besides this Civic, you'll be extremely delighted to know that my daily driver is actually a Prius C. I use it for daily commuting, automatic, low fuss. I just drive it. My Prius, it only serves a daily driving purpose for me. I get no enjoyment out of driving it. It's purely a means of getting myself to work. I had some crazy commutes, so I just needed something that wasn't manual, because the manual was killing me. I used to have a four-door Civic that was a super beater car, and it was manual. It was a lot of fun to drive, but driving something like a Prius is great on gas, and I don't have to think. As opposed to this car, I'd say they're both equal in terms of slowness, because this car is actually not that fast, even though it's swapped with the B series motor, but it's actually stock, completely stock, and driving it's kind of low, so I don't really get to beat it, and I try and baby it when I can.
Jonathan may talk about his Civic modestly, but he's built something truly iconic over the years, and you can see why he would want to keep it. We'll hear more from him later, but next I wanted to talk to someone who hadn't exactly kept his same car, but in a way still had, and he's a serious enthusiast. What's up? Good to see you.
What first got me into cars was my friend back in high school. We were in this little after-school touring program. And that one day he was always bringing like these car magazines, and it was, at my age at that time, it was like a really like an in thing to be in. Like it was like a really popular hobby. I was reading his magazines and I was seeing like all these cool cars on there and like what people can like do to it. And there's like a lot of cool builds at that time. My name is Simon Lee, and this is my 1988 Toyota MR2. I've had this car for 5 years. This is my third AW11. My very first car was a 1986 Toyota MR2. And I had that one for like a year. And then after that, I bought another AW11. It's a 1985. It was really clean, but unfortunately I crashed it. So that brings me to this car. The reason why I didn't keep the other ones is mainly because just issues that I didn't want to continue fixing. My plans with this one was to keep it as long as possible as like a long-term project car, but you know, like how things are, like sometimes you just lose interest in it. So the story with this one was I originally had some engine issues, so I purchased a used one, and my friend Eddie Baca was kind enough to help me swap that one into this one. And so after all that's done, I drove it for like a week and I blew a head gasket. So I was like, okay, no big deal, I can fix that. So I fixed it, and for some reason it got even worse. It still has a head gasket issue. So now it's neither like, there's like a crack on the cylinder wall or something's cracked on the head. And so at that point, like I already spent like a lot of money on fixing an issue, and it just didn't fix it. So now I'm just gonna stop like dumping money into it, and that was pretty much like it. It really depends on the person itself and what their goals are for the car, and also like if there's like some sentimental value to it or anything like that. But it really depends on the person. And for me, I really wanted to keep it for a very long time, but it's just like there's just a few issues that's been going on that's been preventing me from keeping this car.
Life happens, and sometimes you need to recognize when it's time to move on. I wanted to get the perspective of someone a little older, someone who's owned a car for longer than anyone I've ever met.
My name is Grady Raymer, and this car is a 1968 Ford Mustang Coupe that I picked up when I was 15 years old. So.
Is it okay to ask how old you are now?
Yeah, I will be 48 in a couple of days. So I've had this all my life, essentially.
Awesome. Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you very much. I own another car as well. It's a daily that I use, which is a 2004 E55 AMG Mercedes. So it's one heck of a fun daily. The differences between the two is the AMG is 5-seater. If we're gonna go on a road trip, you know, as a family, or load up a bunch of people and go somewhere, I'm taking the Mercedes. Awesome, super casual. If I want someone to have a auditory visual experience and really understand what driving's about, I take them out in the Mustang. And people say they're the same amount of horsepower and things like that, but there's this no comparison when you get in the car. It's about choosing the right car for the right purpose. It's ironic when you hear the list of cars, I drove a Prius. Why? Because it allowed me to go in the carpool lane 60 miles each way on a commute. You're not going to do that in this car. You're not going to do that in an AMG. So it's about getting the right car for the right purpose. I've had a Caprice Classic. I've had an 84 Camaro. I've had a GMC Jimmy. I've had a car that they wouldn't know here at all in the United States. It was called a Pontiac Sunrunner. Now, what people would know that as is the Geo Tracker. It was like in Canada, they had this Pontiac Sunrunner. So that was fun. We've had a couple of Minis. The reason I kept this car versus the other cars is there's just a connection with the car. It's amazing. There is no place you can go or can't go in this car and not have someone come up to you and say, I knew someone who had a Mustang, I had a Mustang, I wrecked a Mustang, I wrecked my friend's Mustang, my neighbor had a Mustang. It is unbelievable experience. And you know, things like just making a lane change in this car is 1,000 times easier than any other car. Why? I make a turn signal, people back up, they let you in, wave, give you a thumbs up. Try to do that in a BMW, ain't gonna happen. So that's why I like it.
So what about people who don't hold on to cars? Know someone who seems to constantly have a new car or is getting a bigger and bigger collection? Are they not satisfied? Are they really getting a better experience? It could be good to try something new too.
My name is J.O. Valley, and right now I currently own 6 cars. The one behind me is the newest addition to the family. It's a 1995 Acura NSX, supercharged. The one behind that is a Nissan GTR, and the one behind that is one of the dailies, which is a Subaru WRX on full flex fuel. I have a 2018 Toyota Tacoma TRD, and then I also have a Chevy 6.6 diesel and another work truck. I was maybe like 14, 15. My dad gave me a Toyota pickup truck, and that one I didn't even know how to drive, so I just started working on it, putting it together, and I would just get home from school and I would just sit there and practice shifting on it. I never even got to drive it. He ended up selling it, but it was basically my first car. After that, I had a Isuzu Trooper, like a 90, 92. It was kind of cool. It was 4x4 and the back windows would slide back, and it was just fun. It was really, really slow though. I would see everybody just take off and I was just play catch up. After that, I bought a Honda Accord, got a Chevy S10, Acura Integra, another Integra after that, another Tacoma. It was like a newer Tacoma, I believe it was like a 04. Oh, I got when the Dodge Rams barely came out, the 5.9s, Acura Integra Type R, a 96 Toyota Supra, right-hand drive. That was kind of like the car that I thought I was gonna keep forever, but then things happened, and that car is like a whole different story with that one. A Mercedes, 1997 Camaro, the CLS 550, CLS 63, and I ended up trading that one, and that's how I got the GTR, the Impala Super Sport, 1968 Mustang, a few of the Civic hatchbacks. I had a Honda S2000, Acura NSX, the Subaru. I had another Subaru also, a STI. I think there's a couple that I just probably forgot. I think you can love more than one car at any time. I think differently. I think as you drive the car more, it kind of becomes a part of you, and it grows onto you. I didn't think I had a Subaru before. I didn't think I would get another one, but after I got this one just became like you know, the car to just love and drive. The GTR, same thing. You would see it, and I don't want a GTR, but then after I was finally in one, then it's just you fall that love that you kind of gets created. It's like a bond that you create with each car that you own. Basically, all of my cars are different, and they each serve a different purpose. For example, like the red NSX, since I bought it, I've driven it 2 times, and only to check on a couple upgrades that I want to do. So I haven't really even enjoyed it yet. The GTR, I just drive to like on the weekends, or if I know where I'm going, or to meet up with friends. One of the trucks that I have, which is the Tacoma, I drive that one everywhere just because it's small and it's practical, and I can always load and unload things easily for work. I think because I drive a lot, so I like to keep myself basically busy. I could drive like a brand new car, and then I could drive like an old car, and to me it doesn't matter. Like I just enjoy driving a different car. Well, it doesn't matter what kind of car it is to me. Like it could be even a rental, and it's just like different. So it's kind of cool just to see what the car does or how it drives. So I think just mainly that purpose. If you keep a car for so long, I feel like it starts just sitting there and you don't even drive it anymore. I think to me the biggest benefit of switching cars is that you stay basically you're happier. You know, you get so tired of driving one car, and like sometimes I get home from work and I'm already tired of driving my truck. So then I feel like I'm gonna drive something else, like one of the other cars, and it's like a reset button where you get re-energized again and you're ready to drive anywhere else now right after that.
Of course, even if you stick with something for a long time, your past experiences led you there. It can take a while to find the one.
If I can recall correctly, so I've owned a 91 Civic hatchback SI, 94 Civic SI EG, 1993 Acura Integra RS, 98 Lexus RX 300, a 91 Nissan 240 SX, this hatchback, a 1998 Civic 4-door EX, and now my Prius. The reason why I keep this car is because it has a lot of, like I said, it's a combination. It's the combination of things that I wanted to do as a teenager and what I still like as a car enthusiast now. So it's more of a sentimental thing to me. And knowing that I may not be able to replicate this if I tried it again today, it would be nearly impossible. Starting from the front end, it's the Rocket Bunny bumper, and it's the JDM hood, headlights, corner lights. Pretty much the whole front end is the original OEM JDM front end. So the fenders have side markers built into it. I do have the JDM side moldings, the rear bumper.
Let's go around.
Yeah. Yeah, so the rear bumper, this is JDM. The little trim piece on the bottom. So people ask, oh, what's the difference? You came and see what the difference is. So on the Japanese version, you have kind of this like an indentation that runs. You know, the U.S. version doesn't have that, and it's more of a kind of a rounded piece. So normally it has like a colored stripe, so you can actually you can see the definition a little bit more. Me, I left all the trim pieces black because I don't know, that was kind of a thing in high school. It's just, you know, some people painted everything to paint match, but me, I just like the unpainted stuff.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
On MR2, eventually they changed it to being body match.
Right,
So,
right.
like, I left mine black.
Right. I mean, when I was in high school, yeah, everything was paint match, right? Everybody's like, oh, you got to paint match your mirrors and everything. But to me, it's just like, I like the kind of having, it's like a little bit of contrast, right? So I just leave it alone.
So when I got the car when I was 15, the only vision and desire I had was to undo the stuff that had been done to it. And what I mean by that is, this was a car that all on the interior had shag carpet about this thick, all up and down the sides, because that was a thing back in the 70s. At one point, someone thought that was the thing to do to the car. And then had super skinny tires and really big rear tire and a steering wheel that was like this big. And this is a manual steering car, so it was next to impossible. Once I undid that, the only vision I had was to keep the thing running. That was the only goal, is just keep it running and enjoy it. Now, over the years, you start, hearing of other cars or seeing other Mustangs that have a bigger, better engine, and then visions start to go in your mind like, man, if one day I could have something like that, that would make this car really, really cool. The first thing actually is the seats are, actually have bolsters. Anyone's been in an actual classic Mustang, they're flat, they don't recline. This one didn't have headrests, so that was one of the things for safety, we did that. One of the other fun things is we did convert it from a manual, or to a manual. So, as you can see, we just put in the pedals, a whole pedal set. Now we have the shifter. When I first came to LA from Canada, I made sure I went up to Carroll Shelby's shop. and he signed the dash. So
That is
very nice little addition.
Really nice touch.
And the only fun little thing about 68, it's the first year of shoulder straps.
Oh, okay.
Except look, 2 separate clicks. They hadn't figured out how to combine it into one. So I think it's like strapping it into an airplane. It's like 1, 2.
We hadn't developed that technology yet.
That was the first year.
My opinion on the AW11 was I thought it's a very good driver's car. It's a good car to learn how to drive in. You know, it's an old car, so there's only so much you can like learn from it. But you know, people always say like learning how to drive on old cars is the best because there's like no traction control or power steering or anything like that, like electronic stuff. I have driven like different other cars, like Miatas, S2000s, even like the Civics that I've driven. They're all fantastic cars. I would say after driving some of those cars, it definitely did change my opinions on the AW11. Like, you know, there's always like gonna be like a faster car out there. I recently bought a Toyota MRS. It's a 2003. So what made the switch to the MRS is I've always been interested in this chassis. It's very similar to the AW11. It's very lightweight. It's very nimble. Has a very nimble handling. And it's also a newer car, and so you know, with newer cars, it's, you know, better reliability, less issues, less breaking down, more seat time for a track, you know. After switching to this car, it just overall has a very similar like driving experience to my AW11. It just overall feels a lot better. So my plans for modding the cars would be like adding like braces to the chassis, because this particular chassis is a little bit flexible compared to the other generations. And I also plan on eventually switching to like coilovers. Not too sure what brand I'm gonna get, but and also adding a roll bar and switching out my wheels.
The challenges of keeping a car for a long time for me is just, I think finding time to be able to dedicate to it is, you know, sometimes I forget the car is there in my garage. Maybe it's more just, I'm trying not to neglect it. But then again, you know, life gets in the way, so I'm not able to take it out for a drive. So usually I'll try and wait for those really big events that I feel would be a good opportunity for me to, you know, drive the car a little bit, put some air in the tires, put a few miles on it, and that will instantaneously remind me that I love driving the car again. So it is a challenge to, you know, not find interest, but just to find the time to, you know, you want to be able to dedicate, but, you know, that's life, you know, it gets in the way most of the time. So I try and make time for it when I can, and when I do, it's still a rewarding thing for me. Every so often I'm presented with opportunities for me to sell the car. Usually I don't take them up because, again, it all comes back to that feeling of, okay, if I sell it, am I going to regret it? And I feel like I would. But I've also thought if maybe if the right number came along, it might persuade me a little bit more. But like I said, this car hasn't reached, you know, I think Hondas, especially old school Hondas, still have a way to go before they reach a level of true like classic car desirability. So I think I'll hold on to it for now, and you know, maybe that time comes, which is not too far away, when I become 50 or 60. Will it become that one thing that, you know, some guy is going to say, oh, that was the car I had in high school, I want that car, and maybe that'll be it. But for now, no, I like my car, so I'm keeping it as long as I can. When I first got the Civic, I had a very specific intention with it. Again, like I said, this car is a huge nod to my high school days. So I very specifically wanted the styling to be representative of that time period. So it was those exact same wheels. I've owned those wheels since I was 21. Those are the wheels that I lusted over when I was in high school. So I knew that those wheels were going to be the exact wheels that were going to go onto it. I knew that I wanted to have, I didn't necessarily want it to be like this huge like JDM / Japanese style thing, but I think just at the time, you know, I really liked the way that the Japanese front end looked. So I think the goal was to just, without converting the car to right-hand drive, was to just make as much of it as, you know, JDM as possible. So the front end, the seats, there's a lot of really small parts on there that most people probably wouldn't even notice. So moldings, trim, you know, they come from the Japanese model. But then again, there's a lot of like US restoration parts because I don't really need to go that crazy with the conversion process. So it's more, I don't know, it's kind of like slight resto mod / JDM / you know, SoCal 90s style. That's really that was really the initial goal of building that car. And then later on, maybe a few years after owning it, it was like, oh, that was when the stance thing came along. So I was seeing guys like Osaka JDM putting really crazy fitment wheels on Civics like mine. So I tried doing that and I thought, that's not really for me. So I went back to my super fins. And then later on, when I had the opportunity to put the Rocket Bunny kit on, you know, that completely deviated from, you know, the original style that I was trying to go for. And now I had the opportunity to have just a really rare and unique piece on the car that really changed the look of it altogether. So now it's just a mashup of just everything, you know, that I've wanted to do since I was a teenager up until now. So I think I've stayed really true to my design aesthetic and the way I like to have my cars built, and it hasn't strayed too far from it.
The car started out as a 3-speed automatic 289 with under 200 horsepower. So one of the goals at first was, can I do something to make it more than 200 horsepower? So you do the things like a carb swap and a manifold swap, and then I threw nitrous onto it. And that was awesome. And then I thought, wow, and if I could get it through a standard, that would be even better. So we converted it to standard. And the good thing is when you do all that, you make sure the brakes actually stop the car because that's one thing people don't do. So these brakes are solid. And then that was fun. It was enjoyable. But even there at 350 horsepower with a little boost of nitrous, it wasn't as exciting as these new minivans that they're coming out with, they blow by. So it was always like, okay, at one point I will make the engine better. And about 2 years ago, that's what I did. I started from scratch, dart block, stroker motor, and it woke that car up really, really fast. Right now, it's putting 440 to the rear.
All right, cool. Can we see under the hood?
Yep. This stroker motor, it's a dart block. A company makes a 302 block, but it's extra thick. So it still looks like, it's still like it'll fit forward, but they make it so it's extra thick so it can be stroked properly. And now it's stroked to a 363.
Gotcha.
So yeah, a lot of them are, most of these were 347s. And you can do that with an actual stock block. But once you start going to 363, you should probably get the dart block. And this has been for a while.
And you said currently that's not hooked up?
Yeah, I don't even bother. I did have it hooked up, and I could always hook it up again, but I used to run it on my 289 engine all day long. Everyone's like, oh, you break your engine. Not at 125 horsepower boost. Worked great, no issues. But when I fired this up and started to do shifting, I can't imagine. I know guys do it. I watch them on Street Outlaws. I don't know. I don't have those.
So far you haven't
I've not
hooked
fired
it
it through.
up.
No, like it's all plumbed. It's all ready. It's the fuel injected system's all ready for it because we did it all. And then I'm like, what? I don't know because these things break loose as it is. I'm like,
Sure.
I like to keep.
How much power would you be making if?
Well, this kit's designed for 300 horsepower on top of it. So, yeah, I could, no. But I'm like,
wanna die, is what
no,
you're saying.
exactly. I got a family, wife and kids. The challenges with keeping a car a long time is the fact that it's old. There's just certain things. When this car was built in 1968, there is zero chance the people in Ford thought this car would be driving in 2019. It just wasn't thought. So there's plastic pieces on this car. Thankfully not many, but all those, they just disintegrated. So you have to get new pieces. So that's the challenge of an old car is just metal gets older, things, forces are on that car, twists, and you got to make sure that those are maintained. There was a time where I remember thinking, okay, the paint had completely been like chalk. It was pretty much, just beaten up, and the car it was running a little rough. And I remember asking my uncle who had helped find the car, hey, can you just come out and do a once over on this car and let me know your thoughts? Because, either I can either invest some money into it or I don't. And at which point he got underneath it, did some checks, and he's like, no. The bones are just as solid as they always were. He just had to I actually changed the rims, but it was actually the rims that were out of whack. So the car was going like this, which gives that rickety old feeling. Once I got changed to these rims, everything smoothed out. I got new paint, and no, since then never crossed my mind. If you own a car for a long time, there's several benefits. One is you certainly save a lot of money. You're not buying something new all the time. But one of the things that I really like is there is no electrical piece or mechanical piece on this car that I don't know the status of. I know if it's been fixed. I know how it was fixed. I know if wires were spliced, where they were spliced. So when you have new cars or cars that have just been modified by someone else, that's the hardest part. Like, okay, what'd the last owner do? The last owner essentially was me since 1984. So I know what's happened to the car. So I think that's one of the big benefits. I like telling people that I've owned the car forever. I think that I see people's reactions when you say, this is my first car, and their eyes go, what? Because they realize that there's some serious effort and time and commitment to be able to keep any car for that amount of time. And it's interesting to hear people's reactions when they say, oh, I should have kept my first car, or I loved my first car. And I think that's always a fun discussion. So I'm very happy to say, yep, this is, everyone go, well, it's a Mustang. Yeah, it's a Mustang, but it's also my first car. And that's an extra piece. I like that.
I'm also proud to say that I still own my first car. But like Jay said earlier, some people might get bored of the same car after a while, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or something might happen that just makes sense to start from a clean slate. But if you still have that passion for the car, you can keep it alive like Simon did. I've been very fortunate that life has allowed me to keep my MR2 for so long. It was my first car, and I bought it with money I saved from a part-time retail job. I'd done so much research and saved for so long. When I got my MR2, I was completely in love with it, but I never really thought about how long I would actually keep it. I guess I just assumed that, like most things in life, it wouldn't last forever. Eventually it would just get worn out, or something in life would make me get rid of it. And there were times along the way that repair bills would be hard to manage, and it would become a hassle where I would think, maybe this is the time. But it never actually was. I even have a GTR now, and it's amazing. It's my dream car. I've driven a lot of other things along the way too, but I've always kept my MR2, and I don't ever see myself getting rid of it. It's still incredibly fun to drive, and it has sentimental value to me. There's so many memories and experiences that I've had with it. I think we've both grown and changed a lot over the years. So with that, I'll give the last word to Jonathan.
Keeping a car like this for as long as I've owned it, it's very rewarding. It's taking time to see a vision start from one place and then could wind up completely different than what you originally thought of. But that's you know, part of most everything in life. You know, you never anticipate on, you know, starting, you know, you want to start here, but where will you end up later, right? It's like, yeah, of course I wanted to be a representation of my high school days, right? But then at the same time, you can't always live in those days, right? So you have to grow with it, and it's definitely not where, you know, I thought it was just gonna stay the way that it looked when I first, phase one, stay right there, never change anything. But then along the way, it's like, oh, you know what, that looks kind of cool, and then get the bike, wow, that looks really cool, right? So, you know, you have to evolve with your progression, and you know, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.